Can you hear me okay? I arrived in San Francisco on my 24th birthday, June 3rd, 1971. I'd been zigzagging loosely westward from Chicago in my 1968 Mustang for several months. I drove directly to the corner of Haight and Asheville. I was looking for the summer of love, but I was 4 years old. My bankroll was getting slim, but nobody would hire me for a conventional job because I didn't have a California ID. Fortunately, at that time, San Francisco had a unique alternative source of income: street musicians. Now they're common, but then they were rare everywhere else. There were about 2 dozen acts, mostly soloists, a few duos, and 2 classical trios. Everybody was friends, not competitors. I tried working alone, but barely made enough money for meager meals. I realized that I had to find a successful band and figure out how to add value, as we say these days. It didn't take long to find the perfect candidate. It was 2 guys about my age. John was average height, slim and handsome, with a blonde beetle haircut and no facial hair. Lee was well over 6 feet tall and red-toned. His head was a dark mop of unkempt curls with a full beard. Both of them had piercing blue eyes. I had a scraggly beard and large, frizzy hair. The repertoire was a concoction of Dixieland jazz, pop standards, Broadway show tunes, folk songs, and even a little rock. John played a clarinet and Lee banged chords on a vintage 5-string banjo. One day after they finished the set, I offered to drive them to the next location. I chauffeured them around town all day. By dinner time, I was part of the band. They let me move in with them. Their apartment was on the far end of the panhandle of Golden Gate Park. John and Lee each had a bedroom, and I slept on a mattress on the living room floor. As far as I was concerned, that was as good as the penthouse at the Mart Hopkins. In addition to transportation, the other problem that I saw is that they were too successful. When they played, they would attract a crowd so large that those in back couldn't get up to the front to put money in these banjo kits. When they stopped playing to pass the hat, the crowd would evaporate. Lee's brilliant inspiration was that I would pass the hat while they were playing. Lee taught me the secret of getting people to give money. Walk up to each person, look them right in the eye and smile and say, "If you're enjoying the performance, please give the musician some money." Instead of a natural hat, I carried John's clarinet case. About 1 person in 10 would say, "How do I know you're with the band?" I would reply, "That's why I carry the clarinet case." Only one guy didn't get it. "So," he replied. "Fine," I said, still looking him right in the eye and smiling. "If you're enjoying the performance, please step up to the front of the crowd and give the musicians some money." This innovation doubled the band's daily take to around $50, mostly change. Only the classical trios did better. I did some research preparing for today, and that was about 10% above the national median household income. About 2 weeks later, we went downtown to play Union Square on a late Friday afternoon to catch the office workers leaving their jobs and tourists, then stopped for dinner. On the way back to my car, we passed the Geary Theater, where well-dressed people were arriving for the opening night of some play. John and Lee immediately unpacked their instruments and began playing. The theater goers would stop for no more than 30 seconds, make their contribution, then go inside to get seated. There was no log jam, so there was no need for me to pass the clarinet case. I stood about 50 feet away and enjoyed the music. Furthermore, these rich people gave us mostly bills as opposed to the usual coins. After about 10 minutes, 3 guys in tuxedos came out. John and Lee stopped playing, afraid they were going to kick us out. Instead, they each produced a trumpet and played an amazing fanfare. We went up to the leader and asked if we could play there. He said it was okay, but they would have to pause when it was time for the fanfares. 5 minutes later, he gave them a nod and they stopped. The trio played another fanfare, then John and Lee resumed. This continued until curtain time. When we got back to the apartment, Lee said it was as if they were introducing us. All we needed was a name. He brainstormed on New Orleans, and I came up with the winner, the Bourbon Street Irregulars, a reference to the Baker Street Irregulars, Sherlock Holmes's army of street urchin spies. We came back every night for the remainder of the run of the play. When the trumpet player gave the signal, John and Lee stopped, and the trio played one of their incredible, yet very brief pieces. As the last note of the fanfare reverberated along Greeley Street, I encountered my best circus ringmaster voice. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bourbon Street Irregulars! John and Lee started playing, and the Saints go marching in, and the crowd went wild. We had new adventures every day. Before I knew it, it was Labor Day weekend. San Francisco was loaded with tourists. On Friday, we were so busy that we didn't get a chance to count our money until we were ready for dinner. It was just over $100, more than we had ever made in a single day. To celebrate, we went to the Chico Steak Joint in North Beach, next to Carol Doda's strip club. After dinner, we said, okay, back to work until we were over $100. We quickly hit our target, and it just kept going. Saturday was more successful, and Sunday was even more successful than that. Monday morning, we declared that we should enjoy a day off for Labor Day. I used to call my parents collect about once a week. The day after Labor Day, they told me about an opportunity on a small island north of Vancouver, Canada. I knew that I had to go. The next morning, I bid John and Lee a tearful farewell and headed north up the coast on I-5. But that's a story for another day.